Hi there, it's HYZ Marie here, and today I'm back with another theory. If you're familiar with the Legend of Zelda franchise, then you'll know that the lore is strange and convoluted, and that didn't get any better with Tears of the Kingdom and its introduction of the Zonai, a race who was supposedly descended from gods and founded Hyrule, potentially breaking all of the lore that was established up until that point. But I think I can fix this problem. Or at least make it a little less glaring. So, I'm not going to say that I've 100% fixed the Zonai issue. I don't think even Nintendo could pull that one off. But I think I can make it fit into the rest of the Zelda timeline about as much as the other established games do. Granted, that isn't a super high standard, but hey, is it really fair to expect one fan to do better than Nintendo themselves have done? I'm just sharing a few theories of how the Zonai and Tears of the Kingdom as a whole might fit into the larger narrative. And it seems needless to say at this point, but yes, there will be Tears of the Kingdom spoilers in this video. So let's jump right in. Our first problem is that according to Tears of the Kingdom, Hyrule was founded by King Rauru, one of the last Zonai, and Queen Sonia, a priestess of Hylia. Right off the bat, this created a slew of problems. For one, Skyward Sword claims that the versions of Link and Zelda in that game founded Hyrule. We actually see the events that lead up to that. How are both accurate? Plus, how is Light Rauru's power when it's historically been tied to Hylia? Where is the bloodline of the goddess? Why are there freaking Rito this early in the timeline? Where were the Zonai during the events of Skyward Sword, and what's up with the depths and the Lome? Believe it or not, I have some answers that are, if not perfect, at least passable for all of these questions. First off, where the heck did Skyward Sword go? Well, when we see Link and Zelda found Hyrule, it's just them. I mean, sure, Groose goes off and does its own thing, but it's mostly up to Hylia and the Hero of the Sky to found Hyrule. It's going to take a lot of time for the population to grow from 2, especially since we don't see anyone else down there who looks remotely like a Hylian. In the time where the population is really small, it wouldn't make sense to have a kingdom. There just wouldn't be enough people for a strong central government to be necessary. This means that Hylia's descendants wouldn't necessarily be rulers at first. They might likely be leaders, but it's possible they'd be religious leaders instead. Then, once there was the need for a strong central government, it would make sense for a priestess of Hylia, someone who held great importance already, to ascend to the throne. This might be exactly what happened with Sonia. Now, there's another problem with this idea. Why does Sonia have time powers when Hylia is associated with light? Well, maybe we were wrong about that. After all, light isn't exclusive to Hylia. We see the 3 golden goddesses, Furore, Din, and Neru, also associated with light. Some clear examples would be Hyrule's creation myth in Ocarina of Time, and the light spirits in Twilight Princess. So it's possible that Hylia isn't associated with light herself, but was entrusted with it by the golden goddesses. After all, they did mostly just up and leave Hyrule with her as the babysitter and the Triforce as an emergency hotline. Instead, Hylia herself is the goddess of time. Light and time are closely tied together in Hyrule, with the Ocarina of Time being a sacred relic, and Skyward Sword, the game to most prominently feature Hylia, involving some of the most convoluted time travel in the series. And if you've glanced at the timeline even once, you'll know that that level of time shenanigans is an impressive feat. So, Hylia is the goddess of time. As for light, that belongs to the golden goddesses, and anyone tied to them can use it, which explains why a Zonai, connected to the gods, has light powers. Okay, so Tears of the Kingdom does sort of fit in the timeline, with the past segments happening somewhere between Skyward Sword and the Minish Cap. One problem is those darn Rito. Don't get me wrong, I love the Rito, but why are they this early in the timeline? They shouldn't appear until Wind Waker, where they evolve from the Zora, and that can't even be how these Rito came to be because they coexist with Zora. Well, when you think about it, these Rito have almost nothing in common with the ones in the Wind Waker. For one, they're actual humanoid birds, not just humans with wings and beaks. They have innate flight instead of earning their wings, and heck, they don't even live in the same climate. They live in cold, snowy mountains, not on top of a volcano in the middle of the ocean. These aren't Wind Waker Rito at all. But then, what are they? Well, the answer is loft wings. So, if you look at the design of the Rito in Tears of the Kingdom, they don't look at all like the Wind Waker Rito. But you know what they do resemble? The loft wings from Skyward Sword. This fixes the entire problem of Rito and Zora coexisting, and explains how Rito could be present so early in the timeline. The only issue is why they wouldn't have appeared in the rest of Hyrule's history, and I think there's an answer for that too. Have you ever noticed how Hyrule changes in shape and size as time goes on? Sure, in the real world that's based on hardware limitations, but it might have a lore reason too. Real countries' borders have changed all the time throughout history, and it's possible that Hyrule has been gaining and losing territory. The Rito lived in an area that was outside Hyrule for a bit, but now it's part of the kingdom, and so are they. But this doesn't fix the main issue, the Zonai. Where did they come from? Why were they in decline? Do they have any relevance to the rest of the timeline? Well, here's a thought. You may have noticed that the Zonai technology in Tears of the Kingdom resembles the Tweely in terms of aesthetic. You may not have noticed, though, that it also kind of looks like the robots found in Skyward Sword's Mineru Desert. Plus, the image on these stones looks a bit like the symbol for the Zonai. What if the Zonai were the people who lived in the Mineru Desert? They built the robots and advanced technology found there, but resources were running out. They dug into the depths for more resources, creating the time shift stones as the last resort, but it didn't work. With their numbers dwindling, the Zonai used their technology to flee to the sky long before the events of Skyward Sword. At some point between Skyward Sword and Rauru's time, the Zonai came back to the surface, bringing their technology with them and helped the newly arrived Hylians to build their society. But there's just one more thing. What's up with the depths? So, the depths. Those are still a piece of the puzzle, as well as the resemblance to the Tweely and the aspect of the ancient hero. I think these are all connected to another group of Zonai, the Lome. The Lome were the people who originally crafted the barbarian armor, and they had a different appearance from other Zonai because they split off some time ago to live in the depths. You can see what one would have looked like in the aspect of the ancient hero set, which somewhat resembles a Zonai, but also has hair reminiscent of the barbarian armor, and unlike Rauru or Mineru, has digitigrade legs and a tail. Perhaps living in the depths made the Lome a bit more animalistic than their surface counterparts, in more ways than merely appearance. The depths are probably not an easy place to survive in after all, even before all the gloom appeared down there. And as we see them in Tears of the Kingdom, they're also filled with runes that resemble the Twilight Realm and several sort of lost spirit things? Well, this may mean that the Lome were the interlopers. Now, all of them can't have been the interlopers, or that ancient hero wouldn't have been around during the calamity, but perhaps some were. A few Lome decided to play God, making the Fused Shadows, and maybe the Majora's Mask, since the description of its creators is nearly identical to that of the interlopers. They got themselves banished as a result, which is why the Tweely exists. The Lome that were slightly less crazy stayed underground, resurfacing to deal with the calamity later on, because they managed to stay alive long after the other Zonai were extinct. So, in summary, long before the events of Skyward Sword, the Zonai existed on the surface, where they lived in the Lanayru region, which was a fertile land with plenty of resources, like Zonite and ancient flowers, that they could use to build the most primitive forms of Zonai technology. They made some little robots to help them out, but began to run out of resources. Worse, the land itself was dying. They tried to create stones that could reverse the effect, but it was too little too late. With few other options and few Zonai remaining, they ascended to the sky. Now, by the time of Skyward Sword, the Zonai had been chilling in the sky for some time. They came down around the time all the monsters went away to find this new group of people, the first surface-dwelling Hylians. These people were just getting started with their civilization, which included a bloodline of priestesses descended from Hiya, the goddess of time. The Zonai helped them get onto their feet, but the Zonai still kept dwindling even as the Hylians grew in population. Eventually, there were enough Hylians that they began to think about establishing a government, so they chose Rauru, one of the last Zonai, to be their king in honor of all his people had done to get the Hylians on their feet. Rauru in turn chose one of the priestesses of Hylia, Sonia, for his wife, creating a royal bloodline that had ties to Hylia's mortal incarnation so long ago. Rito existed at the time, since they had descended from Loftwings, and weren't seen for a while afterward because they were kind of just doing their own thing in their own place. Meanwhile, there were some Zonai who had gone to the depths instead of the sky. This group, the Lome, built extensive labyrinths, crafted excellent armor, and ended up adapting to their environment enough that they significantly diverged from their surface counterparts. A few Lome went even further than the labyrinths in armor, though. This sect, known as the Interlopers, created dark artifacts, the fused shadows, and the Mask of Majora. For this, they were banished and eventually became the Twilight. The rest of the Lome remained in the depths, hidden from surface dwellers, and eventually ended up outliving the rest of the Zonai by so much that the ancient hero in the first Calamity was a Lome. Eventually, though, they succumbed as well, leaving the Zonai entirely extinct. Well, except for Mineru. Wait. She doesn't have a body anymore. Can we even count that? Yeah, I'm gonna say that one disembodied individual doesn't count as enough for the species to not be extinct. Sorry, Mineru. And sadly, that was it for the Zonai. Hey, thanks for watching this video. I've been a Zelda fan since before I was old enough to even hold a controller, and I just love fantasy species like the Zonai. Gosh, that does not sound like a word anymore. So this was really fun to make. Tears of the Kingdom was definitely a doozy for the lore, and I think I've patched up its holes as best as I can. So have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now!